It was always the small things that bothered Naomi Spencer the most. Not the shouting kind of disrespect, the silent kind. The way people spoke slower to her, like she might not understand. The way some guards glanced twice at her badge before letting her through. The way she could walk into a room filled with people who looked powerful, and somehow, still be the one questioned about why she was there. That morning at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, it happened again. Naomi stood in line at the VIP check-in, phone in one hand, passport in the other, waiting patiently while the line in front of her moved. She wasn't dressed for attention, cream slacks, a navy blouse, simple flats, but she carried herself with the posture of someone who had earned her space in the world. And yet, when her turn came, the receptionist didn't even look up. Next, the young woman called, eyes still on her screen. Naomi stepped forward. "Good morning," she said politely. "I'd like to check into the Delta Sky Lounge. My flight's to Geneva." The woman's fingers froze for a split second before she finally looked up. Her smile was professional, but shallow. "This lounge is for Platinum or Diamond members only, ma'am." Naomi placed her card on the counter. "That should cover it." The woman glanced at the card, then at Naomi, her eyes making a slow, questioning sweep from head to toe, as if trying to make the card make sense. "I'll need to verify this," she said after a pause. Naomi's lips twitched into a patient smile. "Of course." Behind her, two men in their early 40s, both white, both wearing navy jackets and the kind of confidence that comes from always being welcomed, joined the line. The receptionist brightened instantly. "Oh, Mr. Walker. You're back again. Heading to London today?" "Sure am," one of them laughed, sliding his card across. "No verification. No hesitation. No delay." Within seconds, they were waved in. Naomi stood quietly to the side, pretending to scroll her phone, though her eyes stayed on the reflection in the counter glass. The receptionist was now typing, slowly, clicking between screens with exaggerated care, as if trying to find a reason to question what was already verified. 15 minutes passed. Naomi checked her watch. Her flight was still an hour and a half away, but her patience was running thin. "Is there a problem?" she asked finally. The receptionist blinked. "Oh, no problem," she said quickly. "Just taking a while to load." When the system finally confirmed her membership, the woman looked almost disappointed. "You can enter now," she said, sliding Naomi's card back. Naomi met her eyes for a moment. "Thank you." Then she walked past the counter and into the lounge, her heels clicking softly against the tile. Inside, everything was calm and golden. Soft lights glowed against glass panels, and a gentle saxophone melody drifted from unseen speakers. Naomi found a corner seat near the window, overlooking the runway. She exhaled slowly, pulling her laptop from her bag. This wasn't just any flight. She was heading to Geneva to speak at the Global Logistics Summit, a gathering of international trade and infrastructure leaders. Her company, Spencer Freight Systems, had just secured a contract that could reshape import networks across 3 continents. But no one looking at her in that lounge would have guessed that. To them, she was just another traveler, another "maybe she's not supposed to be here" face in a first-class world. She took a sip of water, composed herself, and tried to let it go. Half an hour later, Naomi looked up from her laptop to see the same 2 men from earlier chatting with a bartender near the lounge bar. They didn't recognize her, but she recognized them, their tone, their smirks, their loud presence that filled the air. She turned back to her screen. Her assistant, Leah, had sent her a message. "Flight 226 to Geneva delayed by 40 minutes. Crew change. Gate B27. Naomi smiled faintly. "Perfect," she murmured to herself. That gave her time to polish her speech. But as she typed, a strange feeling tugged at her. Something about the receptionist's earlier hesitation wouldn't leave her mind. She pushed it away. She was used to being underestimated. It wasn't new, just tiresome. What she didn't know was that the real insult hadn't happened yet. It was waiting quietly, 30 minutes ahead, At gate B27. By the time Naomi closed her laptop, the lounge had grown quieter. The businessmen from earlier were still laughing near the bar, trading stories that echoed through the otherwise calm space. Naomi glanced at the time. 11:15 a.m. boarding for Flight 226 to Geneva should have started soon. She packed up her things neatly, the way she always did, methodical and efficient, and walked toward the reception desk. The same receptionist was there, scrolling on her phone now. "Excuse me," Naomi said politely. "Can you check if Flight 226 to Geneva has begun boarding?" The woman looked up briefly. "Still delayed, ma'am. No updates yet." Naomi nodded and thanked her before returning to her seat. She sent a quick text to her assistant, Leah. "Still in the lounge. No boarding call yet." Leah replied almost instantly. "Got it. Official site still says delayed. I'll keep checking." Naomi settled back, sipped her water, and opened a book she'd been meaning to finish. The minutes rolled by quietly, 10, then 20. She didn't hear a single announcement for her flight. Not one. It wasn't until 11:45 that she felt something was off. The businessmen who were heading to London, whose flight was scheduled after hers, were already being called to board. Her brow furrowed. She stood up again and walked to the desk. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "Could you check again on Flight 226 to Geneva? It's been quite a while." The receptionist frowned at her screen. Let me see." Naomi watched the woman's expression shift subtly. Her eyes darted, her jaw tightened. "Everything all right?" Naomi asked. The woman hesitated. "Looks like that flight just departed." Naomi blinked. "Departed?" "Yes, ma'am. It took off 10 minutes ago." Naomi's voice was steady, but her heart had dropped. "That's not possible. It was delayed. And I've been sitting here the whole time waiting for a boarding call." The receptionist shrugged, her tone suddenly cold again. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but all passengers were paged. Maybe you didn't hear it." Naomi's patience snapped just slightly, though her tone remained calm. "I didn't hear anything because there was no announcement." "Ma'am, announcements are made through our system," the woman said dismissively. "Maybe you had your headphones in?" Naomi's voice sharpened. "No. I didn't." The woman gave a tight smile. "Well, I'm afraid the flight's gone. You'll have to see customer service to rebook." Naomi stood there for a long moment, silent. Around her, people were chatting softly, sipping their champagne, unaware of what had just happened, or maybe unwilling to notice. It wasn't the inconvenience that stung her. It was the pattern. That feeling of being brushed aside, as though her time, her plans, her presence, all of it was somehow less valid than everyone else's. She walked out of the lounge, heels clicking sharply now, every step fueled by disbelief. The terminal was alive with movement, but to her, it all blurred into noise. At gate B27, the screen already displayed departed. The gate agent was packing up paperwork. Naomi approached. "Excuse me, can you tell me what time Flight 226 left?" The agent looked up, surprised. It departed at 11:35, ma'am." Naomi frowned. "It was supposed to be delayed." The woman nodded slowly. "It was, but we got a manual override for an early departure." "Manual override?" Naomi repeated. "Yes, from the lounge coordination desk," the agent said, flipping through her sheet. "They called it in around 11:10. Naomi felt a chill run through her. "From the lounge?" The agent nodded again, oblivious. "Yeah. They said all passengers were accounted for." Naomi clenched her jaw, her voice barely above a whisper. "All passengers were not accounted for." The woman gave a weak smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You'll need to rebook at customer service." Naomi didn't move. For a few seconds, she just stood there, staring at the closed gate, her reflection caught in the glass beyond it. Somewhere in the distance, the plane that should have carried her to Geneva was slicing through the clouds. And for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she'd mastered: anger. Not loud or explosive, just cold, razor-sharp anger that lived behind her calm expression. She turned slowly and began walking back toward the lounge. Back at the entrance, the receptionist looked startled to see her again. "Ma'am, can I?" Naomi raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Her tone was polite, but icy. "You made a call to gate B27 at 11:10, didn't you?" The woman's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about." Naomi stepped closer. "You told them all passengers were accounted for." "That was a lie." "I didn't." Naomi reached into her bag and pulled out a black leather folder. She opened it slowly, revealing an embossed gold seal above her name. Naomi Spencer, U.S. Aviation Advisory Board Ambassador for International Transport Relations. The woman froze, eyes wide. Naomi's voice dropped to a quiet firmness. "You may have assumed I was just another traveler. But what you did wasn't a mistake, it was negligence. And it cost your company a federal advisory keynote speaker." The woman stammered, I didn't mean." Naomi's phone buzzed. It was Leah again. "Ma'am, I spoke with Delta HQ. They confirmed the early departure was authorized from that lounge terminal." Naomi looked back at the receptionist. "You might want to call your supervisor. Right now." Within minutes, 2 airport managers arrived. They reviewed the logs, spoke with gate staff, and confirmed everything Naomi already knew. When they returned, their tone had shifted completely. "Ms. Spencer, we sincerely apologize for what happened," one said, visibly uneasy. "We'll be arranging an immediate private charter to Geneva on behalf of the airline." Naomi nodded once. "Good. But make sure this becomes a training example for your staff." The receptionist stood frozen behind the counter, her face pale and expressionless. The same 2 businessmen who had breezed past Naomi earlier watched from across the lounge, their laughter gone. Naomi gathered her bag, looked back one last time, and said calmly, "Respect costs nothing, but sometimes, it ends up being the most expensive lesson." She walked out without looking back, her heels echoing against the polished floor. And for the first time that day, every eye in the lounge followed her. By the time the airport managers had finished apologizing, Naomi had already stopped listening. She stood by the window in silence, watching as another plane lifted off the runway and disappeared into the horizon, the same sky her own flight should have been cutting through hours ago. She wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way most people understood anger. It wasn't loud. It didn't burn. It was a quiet, heavy kind of disappointment, the kind that sits deep in your chest when you realize the problem isn't one incident, it's a pattern. Her phone buzzed again. It was Leah, her assistant. "Ma'am, Delta's senior operations team just contacted me. They said your private flight to Geneva will be ready in 40 minutes. You'll depart from Executive Terminal C." Naomi typed back a simple response. "Thank you, Leah. Make sure the summit team knows I'm still coming." Then she looked around the lounge one last time. The same receptionist who had brushed her off earlier was now standing stiffly near her supervisor, head bowed as they spoke in low tones. The 2 businessmen who had once laughed past her now sat in silence, pretending to scroll their phones. And Naomi, quiet, composed, still, just gave a faint, almost weary smile. People often mistook her composure for weakness. But they didn't know that self-control had been her armor for years. When you'd had to fight twice as hard to be seen as equal, calmness became your sharpest weapon. She left the lounge without another word. At the private terminal, the world looked different. There were no long lines, no dismissive stares, just polished floors, quiet hallways, and staff who greeted her by name. A black SUV pulled up to the jetway. The driver opened the door with a nod. "Miss Spencer, your jet is ready." Naomi stepped out into the sunlight, her heels clicking against the tarmac. The sleek white Gulfstream G550 glistened under the Atlanta sun. The pilot himself came down the steps to greet her. "Welcome aboard, Miss Spencer." We've been briefed on the situation. You'll be in Geneva before dawn. She smiled softly. Thank you, Captain. As she settled into her leather seat, Naomi glanced out the window, thinking. Not about revenge. Not even about the flight. But about the quiet irony of it all. The same people who had doubted she belonged in that lounge were now sitting in the same terminal, watching a woman they'd ignored take off in her own jet. It was early morning when the plane touched down at Geneva International Airport. The sky was gray-blue, the kind of calm that comes right before sunrise. A car was already waiting to take her to the conference center. Inside, banners lined the marble lobby of the World Trade Hall, displaying her name in bold letters, Naomi Spencer, keynote speaker, Global Logistics Summit 2025. She walked through the corridor, shoulders straight, her heels echoing softly. Staff members nodded respectfully as she passed. When she stepped onto the stage, cameras flashed. Her name appeared on the big screen behind her. And at that moment, she thought back to that lounge, the silence, the glances, the doubt. She adjusted the microphone and began. Before I talk about global trade, she said, her voice calm but strong, I want to talk about something more basic. Something human. The room went still. Every system, every network, runs on connection. The moment one part of it dismisses or ignores another, the whole structure weakens. Bias isn't just a social issue, it's an operational flaw. Because when you underestimate someone, you don't just lose respect, you lose efficiency, progress, and potential. Applause began to spread through the hall. She didn't smile. Not yet. I was reminded of that truth just yesterday, right before coming here. And it taught me that sometimes, the things meant to delay you only redirect you to something bigger. When she stepped off the stage, her phone was already buzzing non-stop. Leah's message popped up first. Ma'am, you're trending. Someone at the lounge had recorded the entire confrontation, Naomi being ignored, then calmly revealing who she was. The clip hit social media within hours. By morning, it had spread across every major platform. Black CEO denied entry to VIP lounge, flies to Geneva on private jet. The comments poured in. Queen energy. That's how you move when you've got receipts. The calmest clapback I've ever seen. By noon, Delta issued a formal public apology. The receptionist was quietly placed on administrative leave. And the same two businessmen? They were still in Atlanta, because their London flight had been grounded overnight due to technical failure. They watched the news report on a lounge TV, recognizing the face now speaking confidently from the Geneva stage. As Naomi's private driver took her through the winding streets of Geneva later that day, she finally allowed herself a small smile. Leah's voice came through the speakerphone. Ma'am, everyone's been talking about what happened. Do you want me to prepare a statement? Naomi looked out the window at the calm lake, the morning mist lifting over the water. No, she said quietly. Let the story speak for itself. Then she added after a pause, sometimes silence says everything. The next morning in Geneva, Naomi sat by the window of her hotel suite overlooking Lake Leman. The water shimmered beneath the soft gray light, still and glassy, as though the city itself were holding its breath. On the table beside her was a folded copy of the Financial Herald. Her face was on the cover, poised mid-speech, calm, collected. The headline read, Grace Under Pressure, Naomi Spencer Redefines Power. She traced the edge of the newspaper with her fingers but didn't smile. Not out of indifference, out of understanding. The world had finally noticed her, but not for the reasons she wanted. People were calling her inspirational, graceful, the woman who didn't lose her cool. But she wasn't trying to be any of those things. She just wanted to be treated fairly. Her assistant, Leah, entered quietly. Ma'am, CNN and BBC have both requested interviews. They want you to talk about the discrimination incident. Naomi sipped her tea slowly. Tell them I'll think about it. Leah hesitated. It could be good for visibility, your message, your company. Naomi turned to her, calm as always. Visibility is good, Leah. but I don't want the story to become about outrage. I want it to become about awareness. Leah nodded softly. I understand. Naomi looked out the window again, her reflection merging with the distant mountains. You know, she said quietly, it's not the first time I've been ignored in a room. It used to make me angry. But now, I just remind myself that being overlooked doesn't make you invisible. It just means they haven't learned to see properly yet. Leah smiled faintly. You always turn pain into poetry. Naomi laughed under her breath. Maybe that's the only way to stay sane in a world that keeps testing your patience. That afternoon, Naomi attended a private roundtable with CEOs and diplomats. As she entered the conference hall, several attendees stood, greeting her with respect that hadn't been there before. One of them, a middle-aged man with silver hair, approached her with an apologetic tone. Miss Spencer, I watched your speech yesterday. I also saw the video. I just want to say, what's happened to you is unacceptable. Thank you for handling it the way you did. Naomi nodded politely. Thank you. But what matters most now is how we make sure it doesn't keep happening, to anyone. He hesitated, then smiled. That's leadership, right there. Naomi didn't answer. She just extended her hand, her expression composed, steady. Because for her, leadership wasn't about speeches, it was about moments like this, when you could turn quiet pain into powerful purpose. Later that evening, as the conference ended, Naomi walked alone along the lake promenade. The air was crisp, the water glowing gold beneath the city lights. She thought about her younger self, about all the rooms she'd entered where people assumed she was someone's assistant, not the one in charge. About all the times she'd been told to wait, to prove herself, to be patient. And now, here she was, flying across continents, changing policies, commanding rooms that once shut her out. She stopped for a moment, pulling her coat closer. The wind carried the scent of rain and pine. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. I saw the video, baby. You handled that like a queen. I'm proud of you. Naomi's eyes softened. She typed back. Thanks, Mom. I just did what you taught me, stay still when the world tries to shake you. When Naomi's private jet touched down back in Atlanta, the airport was different this time. At the Sky Lounge, the same receptionist was waiting at the counter, looking nervous. As Naomi approached, the woman stepped forward. Miss Spencer. I wanted to apologize. I was wrong to assume. Naomi paused, studying her face. There was real remorse there, no script, no corporate polish. She gave a small, almost kind smile. Thank you. I accept your apology. Then she added gently, just remember next time, respect isn't based on how someone looks when they walk up to your counter. It's who they are when they walk away. The woman nodded, eyes glistening. Yes, ma'am. I understand. Naomi didn't linger. She walked past the counter, through the same glass doors, and into the lounge. But this time, the space didn't feel heavy. It felt lighter. She wasn't there to prove anything anymore. She was just there, belonging, existing, and unbothered. As her assistant joined her at the table, Naomi opened her laptop and smiled faintly. Leah, she said, book another flight to Geneva next month. This time, we're going to host a workshop for women in leadership. Leah grinned. Under your name? Naomi shook her head. No. Under ours. She leaned back, her eyes glancing out the window toward the horizon, planes taking off one after another, like endless possibilities. And in that quiet moment, Naomi realized something powerful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving people wrong, it's in continuing to rise, quietly, while they're still trying to understand how you did it. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's power under control. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Because when you know who you are, you let your actions speak louder than the noise around you. Her story reminds us all that dignity isn't about how others treat you, it's about how you choose to respond. So, what would you have done if you were in her shoes? Would you have spoken up? Or walked away and let your success do the talking? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't just scroll past, like, share, and subscribe to Black Tales Stories, where we shine light on real experiences that the world too often tries to ignore. Because every story like this deserves to be heard. And every voice deserves to be seen.